talk about how to do a chairman's presentation. So here's the basic agenda for today. These are the 5 sections that we're going to go over. These 5 sections make up the chairman's submission and presentation process.
For new folks coming in, we have some additional resources and some packets for you to follow along with the presentation.
So I'd like to ask before we begin, has anyone ever presented chairman's before? Anybody sitting here? Or anybody on your team? Has your team ever presented chairman's? You have? Wheeler, right? Okay. Sounds good. Let's start off with the first section, picking a theme. So in front of you, I've printed out the packets, and the packets contain various worksheets that go along with each section. Please follow along as we go, and we will guide you through the worksheets. So picking a theme is important because it helps you tie all of your ideas together and allows your essays and presentation to be cohesive. Here's a general outline for picking a theme. We've included these 8 steps. Of course, you don't have to follow them completely, but this would be a good place to start. So let's just jump into the questions. So for question 1, you would think of what makes you different from the other teams. What do you do differently? For example, some teams, they're very good at mentoring or helping out other first teams, and they could write that in their presentation. So take 20 to 30 seconds and write down some things that your team does differently that you don't really see at competitions. Okay, so it's been 30 seconds. Does everyone have at least something? Okay, sounds good. So for question 2, first emphasizes that helping your community or other first teams is just as important as working on the robot. So how have you helped any other first teams or given back to your community? You could include any community outreach events, or even, let's say you host an FLL tournament each year. Even just mentorship, like if you mentor younger teams, FPC, FLL, or even other FRC teams. So take a couple seconds and write down whatever that your team does that fits into helping other teams. Okay, let's move on to question number 3. What are some of the characteristics of your team? These could just be a few phrases or words. How would you describe your team? Or you could even answer, how big is your team? How do you organize it? For example, on our team, we have 6 different departments, and every department has 1 lead and an assistant. So just take a couple seconds to write down some characteristics about your team. I think most of us have finished writing. We can move on to question 4. So it's important to track what you do and how much time you spend doing it. Judges love to see some facts and statistics that you can provide them with. And also, they love when you tell them how you've got to that information. For example, we use T-Sheets. They're one of our sponsors, and we use T-sheets to track all of our time for all of our events or any projects that we do. Individual members have the app on their phones, and if they show up to a meeting, all they have to do is just clock in and then clock out when they leave. So this allows us to effectively track our time and at least provide a ballpark number for the judges in the pits or in the room. So take a few minutes and see how you track your time. If it's just signing people in as they show up, or just tracking the number of events you do. Any statistics look great. Okay, I think most of you have something down. Let's go on to question 5. So I'm sure your team does a lot of things, but unfortunately we can't include everything that we do in our presentation. That's why it's very important to look back at all of the items or projects or initiatives that you do and pull out some of the things that really jump out to you, or something that you will feel that will wow the judges. And as we go along, you will want to highlight those things repeatedly throughout your presentation, so judges will remember that. Okay, let's move on to question 6. So now that you've thought of some things and you've written quite a few things down, look back at what you've written and see if there are any common threads. For example, do you mentor a lot of teams? Do you help a lot with younger teams or FLL teams? Do you participate in a lot of community outreach events? Look for those common threads, and that will help make your theme. Okay, let's move on to question number 7. You want your theme to be broad enough that you can apply it to all of the aspects on your team, whether it be engineering, outreach, or programming, or anything else that you do. For example, our theme last year was create, innovate, and inspire. And we could apply that to anything we did. There are a lot of things that we created in engineering. I'm sure that we inspired some people. There were a lot of opportunities that we got through outreach that we were able to innovate and inspire the community and even create a product line. So that's how our theme kind of fit with all of the aspects of our team. Okay, looks like everyone has something down. So final question for this section. How does your theme embody your team? Your theme is unique to you and your team only. No other team, is exactly what you do. So that's why no other team can use your theme. Okay, so does everyone have something down? Awesome. So that concludes the first section. Now I'd like to open the floor for any questions. Okay, no questions?
Just thinking.
Okay, sure, take your time.
With the data collection, you guys just insert, you don't just outline, you just insert like a graph or something that shows time spent, with engineering aspects, and time spent with learning service, and stuff like that.
Well, we do use like the app cheat sheets, as I said, and they provide us with usually like a pie chart of what we do, and we take that and we break it up, and that's how we display it on the screen to the judges. We would take that pie chart and break it up and say this section is something for participation, this much is for training, and then write it up on the side how many hours we spent doing it.
You guys also tie it into the essays, right?
Yes, we do, and we will get to that.
How about when you're saying that you're tracking your time, are you using like a spreadsheet and you're logging in, hey, this is on this day, you did this, tablet, we have like community service outreach, mentoring, and development. Whatever you're doing, are you separating them into categories and literally individually tracking that time and then later combine it?
We don't use Excel sheets because we have T-Sheets, which is one of our sponsors. That allows us to track our time a lot more easily because individual members can just have the app on their phone, and if they show up to a meeting or an event, they can clock it in as participation, outreach, respectively with what it is. And then when they leave, they will just clock out and track the time for them. And then anyone checking the hours or seeing how much time we spent, they could go back and look at the individual timesheets or even overall how much time has been spent on this one project or community service in general, or just participation or trainings.
So you see you have a tab?
There is T-Sheets. They are one of our sponsors. This has really been helpful to us because we can effectively track our time, and no one has to, really stand there and take attendance or, keep an Excel sheet of everybody. And it just saves a lot of time.
Is this something you just like download?
You could just download the app on your phone, and you would have an account for the team and your team members.
There's actually a commercial timesheet tracking system, and you actually have to acquire a license. We were lucky enough to, we asked them to give us a license, and they originally came back and said, okay, we'll give it to you half price, and we said, well, that's nice, but we don't have that money. They said, okay, we'll donate it. So we can put you in touch with the guys and see if they'd be willing to expand it. We don't know if they do it for any other teams. They've been doing it for us for about 3 years now.
Okay. So let's move on to the next question, or next section. If you have any questions, please save them, and we would love to try to get to them at the end. Okay, so the next section is the essays. The short and long essays are a huge component of the whole submission and presentation process. The judges read these essays before you come into the room so they can get a bit of background on your team. So this is where you want to provide what you do, how you do it, and share your story for the judges to hear. So here's the overview for the short and long essays. Now there will be 12 to 13 short essays and 1 long essay prompt. The short essays each allow you 500 characters, which is not a lot, trust me. It's only 2 to 3 sentences at most. But the long essay allows you 10,000 characters. Now that's a lot more space to write. But it's very important to organize it so you don't lose track of what you're saying. You want to be very concise and simple or to the point in either the short or long essays because the judges don't have too much time to read over every applicant, and you want them to remember all the things that you've highlighted for them. It's important to always count your characters, especially for those short essays. A lot of times you will have something amazing written, but then you can realize that, oh no, this is 1,000 characters. How can I say the same thing or write it in only half the space? So it's important to count your characters and as you go along, so when it's time to submit the essays, you're not in a rush to cut things out or rewrite anything. Be sure to answer the question for the short essays. A lot of them will be very specific as to what they're asking for. So you always want to read the question or even have multiple people read the question so you're answering exactly what they're asking. Here are a few examples of the short essay and the long essay from last year. So as you can see, the short essays are a lot more specific than, of course, the long essay. Take the first one, for example. Briefly describe the impact of the first program on team participants with special emphasis on the 2015-16 year and preceding 2 to 5 years. For this essay, we could write that FIRST has given our seniors lots of opportunities for scholarships, which has impacted them in a very positive way. It's helped them, pay for college and all sorts of things. So that could be something you could write. Okay, so on page 2, you will find the questions for this section. So we'll go and answer the questions. But first, let's touch on some general key points. You want to always brainstorm with everyone, and if not everyone, at least few representatives from different departments on your team. And this way you will get the best ideas and you will not miss out on anything. Important to track your content. Now, if you check the additional resources page, we have provided a sample chart. Now, we've used this chart in the past, which helps us track our content. You could, next to the topics, which you would have in the first column, you could write the number of short essays which it corresponds to. And for the long essay, you could write yes or no or check if you would like to include it. Always check the first awards manual because that's where you will find all the information, and you want to make sure that you're giving them exactly what they're asking for. One thing to remember is, although your English teacher seems like the best place to go to revise your essay, maybe not for these. Because in English, you write in a very different style. Usually you're analyzing something, but these essays are meant to be written in a very technical style and short, simple. You won't see many compound sentences or a very flourishing style. Because as I said, the judges don't have much time to read over every single essay and keep track of everything. So you want to give them exactly what they're looking for. Very important to make tough choices, not only in the essays, but even your presentation. You will not be able to include everything, so it's important that you only pick what you've highlighted and play with those factors. So question 1, what are some of the projects or initiatives that your team has taken, and how have you continued those initiatives if you started them 2 to 5 years ago? Judges love to see any continuity or sustainability that you have on your team. So take a few seconds to write that down. All right, seems like everyone has something for question 1. Let's move on. For the short essays, it's best to respond with an example for whatever the question asks. If they ask, how have you impacted other first teams? Again, you could write about mentorship or any tournaments you've held, any scrimmages, or any programs that you've implemented to help other first teams in your community. So take a few seconds to write those things down. Okay, let's move on to question 3. So you want to include as much as you can in the 500 characters that you have, but you don't want to overload the judges with too much information. Maybe if you have one example that really hits it home, maybe it's better to just include that instead of including multiple examples. Okay. Let's move on to question 4, because of course you're not writing essays just yet, so you couldn't answer this question right now. So look back to the theme that you had in the first section. Does your theme allow you to break up the long essay into different sections? It's important to organize the long essay because even though you're given such a wide space, it's important to be organized so the judges know exactly what they're about to read. So it would be even a good idea to include subtitles for each section. I'll give you a few seconds to write it down and then we'll move on. Okay. You always want to make sure that whatever you're writing or the content is relevant to the question or whatever's being asked. So even after you've written your essay and you feel good about it and it's under 500 characters, you want to make sure that you've really fully answered the question and given them exactly what they're looking for. Okay. Let's move on to question 6. So like I said, are you including the best examples that you can include? Oftentimes you will write the essays and then realize, oh, wait a minute, this is a better example for this question. And we can oftentimes move around the answers until we finally find whatever fits best for that question. So you want the judges to remember a few things about your team and make your team stand out. This is where you take anything that you highlighted from section 1 and you incorporate that into your essays and repeat it. But you want to make sure not to repeat it too much so it becomes repetitive and that's all the judges remember, but you definitely make sure to highlight it and really hit those points out. Okay, so that concludes the section for the essays. So I'll just take a few minutes to answer any questions you have.
I think part of the question itself is it seems like it's very repetitive, both parts. It seems like you talk about the same thing over and over again. In the previous section, you discussing things that we did, as a team for those years, but then in the essay part, you do the same thing again. So how do we avoid boring the judges with the same thing over and over and over again?
Well, see, picking your theme, you're just pulling those information out when you're brainstorming. So you would look at, okay, what have we done in the past years or 2 to 5 years? The essays is really where you're writing it down. So that's just to pick your theme and have all of your information organized. So you can use that later in your short essays and long essays, and that brainstorming that you spend time on will expedite that process.
So
You
the
don't
theme
have-
is a team use.
Yeah. So your theme is, you're putting all that information to really get your theme together first before you start. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, and if you have any questions along the way, please write them down and we will answer them whenever.
So the next step in the chairman's process is actually writing the presentation we will deliver to the judges at competition. Here's a general overview of the process that we use to write the presentation. You don't have to follow this exactly, but it's a great point to start. So the first spot in your worksheet is just to put your theme down again. This is because the presentation is where you really bring your theme to life. It's a great place to hit this home and make the judges remember you. The next part on your worksheet is the format. Now, when I say format, you probably think about bullet points, pictures. However, format is really a lot more than that. While PowerPoint presentations are the most common way to present chairmans, that's not by any means the only way. There are lots of teams that will pre-record a presentation and bring that in. There are even teams that will just sit down and have a conversation with the judges. It's really whatever works best for your team. However, since PowerPoint is the most common use for the presentation, that's what we're going to focus on for now. When it comes to the format of the PowerPoint, there are a couple different ways you could go. There's always the standard bullet points, but you could also do something a little bit more different, like pictures or quotes. Whatever you do, make sure that you can make the judges interested in what you're showing them. Once again, you want to look at what you want to tell the judges. So in the first content section, content ideas in your worksheet, that's the place where you want to put down what you want to tell the judges in your presentation. This is a great place to put stories, show happy people, because that's what the judges really want to see. As Caddy said, you have to make tough choices. The judges are really only going to remember 3, maybe 4 points about your team. So it's important to pick those 3 topics and center your presentation around those. These could be the 3 biggest projects that you did this past year or over the past 5 years. It could also be the section headers from your long essay. Also, it's great to organize the content that you want to tell the judges by those 3 main points. That way you know what to include around each point to support it. Now we get to actually starting to write the presentation itself. Before you create the visuals or the detailed script, it's good to create a broad script, kind of like an outline. On the very first line of the boxes and lines on the front page of your worksheet, try to create a broad script. This is where you would divide up where you're going to put your content. An example could be the first slide's your intro, the second slide introduces your theme, the third slide introduces your first main point. Now you get to create the visuals. Go ahead and turn to the back of your worksheet and use that first line of boxes to do this. Visuals don't just have to be pictures. They can also be drawings or even collages. It's really just what you want to show the judges. It's important to show the judges happy people because they really don't want to look at people that are just there because their parents told them they had to show up. When it comes to visuals, it's okay to slightly, and I do emphasize slightly, modify your visuals that you're showing to better tell your story. But it's important that you don't change the meaning of the picture. For example, if you can see here, up or in the middle towards the center, you can see a lady in a white shirt staring at the camera. It's okay to cover her up. You're not changing the actual meaning of the picture. It's also okay to stage pictures. However, again, make sure they accurately portray the events that happened. If you thought you had this great picture of a team member working with a little kid, but your camera is off, it's okay to bring those 2 people back together and take another picture. Now it's time to refine the script. This is where you put in the exact wording. Now, chairman's is usually heavily scripted, since you only have 5 to 7 minutes to tell the judges your story. And every word counts. So now under your visuals, take 10-15 seconds to just write down an example of some words that you might use to describe your visuals and your content. Some teams choose to use their chairman's video in their presentation. Out of the last 6 times that we've presented chairman's, we've only used our video once. We used it because we couldn't tell our story in a better way than we did with that video. Usually it's a good idea to have real people, not people on the camera, to tell your story, because it brings your theme to life and you get an aura of passion and liveliness that you can't quite get from a video. It's perfectly okay to use your video though. We're not saying you can't do it. Just think about, is this really what I want to do? You also have to think about what you bring into the presentation room. Last year, we brought in 2 carts. One had a TV on it to show our PowerPoint presentation, and one had a new product line, which was a really big deal to us at the time. Whatever you bring in, make sure it's easy to get into the room and quick to set up. Also, make sure that it adds to your presentation. It doesn't take away from it. It took us some time last year to practice with the props enough so that it wouldn't make noise when we showed them to the judges. Before you can say that your presentation is finished, it's important to time the entire presentation. This includes setting up your props, introductions, and wrapping up the presentation. In the room, you have 5 to 7 minutes to present. Some judges will take into account the time it takes for you to set up and introduce yourselves. Others will not. It'll vary by judge, and you really don't know what to expect. It's better to shorten your presentation a little bit and include the setup time than it is to be cut off if a judge chooses to include that time in your presentation. Now I'd like to open up the floor about some questions. Yes?
So we kind of went over the adding chairman's video in the presentation, but when exactly would be like a good time to add, like in the beginning or like towards the end, like what would be like?
I would recommend towards the end. You could put it in the middle, you could put it in the beginning to introduce your team. It's really what works for your team and your presentation. There isn't necessarily a best time to use it though.
For a team like ours that has all limited English speakers, would you be able to use a video to show like the entire chairman's package?
You could,
Along
yes.
with the written portion?
Yes.
Because that was one of the problems we had the first later on. They would do the project and they get that in front of the judges, and people that didn't even know, and they would freeze up and start thinking too much.
I think you're supposed to, your presentation can be up to 7 minutes, or it should be at least 5.
Yeah, 5 to 7 minutes. You'll have
And the video is only 3.
the chairman's
video.
that you will submit. You can make a different video for your presentation, but that's not the chairman's video that you will submit to the judges for judging.
And now you could do the whole thing as a video if you want.
And now to talk about the chairman's video.
Now that we learn how to write and present your chairman, we're going to learn how to make a proper chairman's video. Now when making your chairman's video, you don't want to generalize it to a point where it's only for judges to see, as most likely judges won't see your video. So we recommend having your video more as where you can show to your students, teachers, your community, to anyone really, as a way to show how your team is and the way it's telling your story. So this is the process overview of how we're going to do the chairman's video. In your worksheet, it'll be step-by-step everything you can do, so we recommend following along. The first thing you want to think about, like we had said earlier about your theme, is identifying what kind of direction your video is. Meaning, how is the style going to be? Is it going to be animation heavy, interview heavy, or is it going to be storytime heavy? You answer the main question of how you're going to engage your audience, as this will determine how the flow of the video will go through. So in your worksheet, we've labeled content, audience, speaker, purpose, or known as CAT. And what that means is that your first thing that you want to think about is your content, which is kind of like the stuff in your video, obviously. Your content can include different shots of how you impacted the team in any shape or form. A great example of this is showing how much you've impacted, say, if you made any products, your outreach toward the younger audience, stuff like that. Your audience are the people who you're going to show the video to. Now, obviously, this will probably be the judges, hopefully, and your community. We recommend that the video be a little bit more on the kid-safe side to show as your younger audience and your, I guess, kid-friendly community. Your speaker is kind of like the perspective of your video. This may include how the video is going to be looked at, as in, is it under an unbiased opinion? Is your perspective under a student's opinion, a mentor opinion, etc.? And lastly, your purpose, why you're making this video. Why in the world are you making a video for your team? And how are you showing that you've impacted your community with a greater good? So jot some stuff down, I'll give you a couple of seconds. So in your, we've also provided you an additional resource page that will include everything you need from getting the proper resources to how to convert your video file. One of the things that most people think is that making a chairman's video, you really need some kind of expensive gear. Well, you don't. A simple camera such as a flip phone or just as simple, even a phone, can work really well for your chairman's video. Another thing that most people think is that you need a really expensive, high-class editing software. Well, you don't really need this. A good editing software would be like Windows Movie Maker. It's free and it works really well with your chairman's video. You can make some really good content with it. And one of the biggest steps you're going to have to think about is how you're going to acquire your footage. This includes how you're going to showing how you've impacted the team, as well as making sure that you have a good list of, say, this is determined by your direction. Is it going to be a lot of animations, photos, interviews, or videos? One thing most people don't realize is that when you take a video, if you're taking a video with a child under the age of 18, you need the consent of the parent or guardian. If you use without their permission, you can get into serious legal issues, and that obviously is not good. Make sure that you have, say, a sign, a waiver form of some sort, anything that will allow you to get the consent of the parent or guardian, so you can take those really good video shots of your team working with younger kids. Now, a major thing, what we provided you in the worksheet are 4 boxes where you can make a visual representation of a scene in your video, just to help you start it. Storyboarding is how you're going to structure your video, and that includes each and every scene that you're going to talk about. So different aspects or departments of your team would be a great example of that. Make sure to involve the entire team, so all departments and all aspects of the team should go along in your video, or however you want your video to be. The next step is writing the script. When writing a script, make sure to have a good balance of people doing this, as in someone who's good at writing, an unbiased opinion, and your editor. That way, everyone agrees when creating the video what everything is. Now, writing your script can involve either as a voiceover, scripted interviews, or just the facts that you're going to put on your video. Make sure that you can think of it more as kind of like similar to a chairman's essay if you have a hard time. So the biggest step that I think that when you create your chairman's video is editing. Editing will determine how you're going to show off to the judges and your community. Is your video going to be happy, inspired, motivated? Make sure that you involve a non-team member or an unbiased opinion, so it gives a balance to your video. Start off with a lot of footage, that way you can go and clean it out, and so you get the proper shots that you want. You're probably thinking music. Obviously music is another major thing, as it also determines the tone of your video. Music is extremely important, determined by how the judges will react, how your community reacts. One thing that most people don't realize is that copyrighted music, you cannot use copyrighted music in your video, as that can be a copyright infringement and you can get into serious legal issues. and be possibly sued for using the music. If you do plan on using copyrighted music, make sure you have the consent of the music producer. We provided in your additional resources a link to a list of songs that are royalty-free, meaning they're not copyrighted. Another funny story that we had with this is that a couple years ago, one of our chairman's videos actually had copyrighted music. As a result of that, we did get copyright claim on social media, but thankfully the music producer let us use their music. This is not the case for all different types of music and chairman's videos. So you want to make sure to go always with royalty-free music. And you're probably thinking, are you done? Make sure to get other people's opinions, unbiased opinions, previous retired judges, mentors, pretty much your community. This is great so that you know that your video, again, is balanced, because that's what you want. You want a good reaction from your video on how your impact and how you're telling your story. And lastly, submitting it. Congrats, you made your own chairman's video. Make sure that the video is in a preferred video file type that works well with PC and Mac. Now, the correct video file type that works for both is MPEG-4. I recommend writing this down because many people don't realize this. If your video still doesn't work either on your PC or Mac, we also have provided in your additional resources a place where you can convert your video for free. This quote is given from the chairman's manual that tells you what exact chairman's video needs to be, which is a 16:9 ratio and cannot be more than 3 minutes long. So here is just a video that we're going to show you about one of our scenes when we were storyboarding for our chairman's video.
We're having a little bit of video trouble. We'll see if that puts loading. We might be able to show it again at the end.
So hopefully we'll get to show it to you at the end. But pretty much what it was about was just a scene capturing our walled stem toolbox and how that was seen in our chairman's video and how that impacted students around the community. So does anyone have any questions about creating this video?
Now, at this point in the chairman's process, you will theoretically written your essays, created your presentation, and created your video. Now it's time to actually give the presentation. It's a little bit more complicated than just walking into the room and speaking. Here's a general overview of the things I wanted to discuss about making a good presentation to make sure that you can knock the judge's socks off when you tell your story in the room. As for the worksheet for this section, I won't go quite along it because it's a little hard to make the good presentation when you don't even have the presentation yet. The worksheet will be great when it comes close to competition time. So I want to ask you guys, what are characteristics of good presenters and good presentation teams? Don't all speak at once.
A loud voice.
Yeah,
Well prepared.
definitely.
He said group.
Charisma, yeah. Some other things, specifically to chairmans, is to have a variety of ages. That way, there's always someone that's been in the room on your team to help the next presenters prepare. It's also great to have varying expertise. If everybody on your presentation team only knows about one specific topic, when the judges ask questions, you might not be able to answer them. Make sure they work well together as well. That'll make the writing process go better, as well as the presenting process go better. As you can see, you got to practice some time again. This is really important. As you practice more and more, Sometimes your presentation will get longer and shorter without you realizing it. Make sure that it's at least 5 minutes, but no more than 7, or else you'll be cut off, or you'll have lots of time just to sit around and wait before you can do your questions with the judges. It's also important to practice with your props. If you don't practice enough, your props probably won't work as you expect them to when it comes time to present. It's important to practice with your visuals, like if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, to make sure you practice with that presentation behind you. Any videos that you might be showing, and any handouts that you might be giving to the judges. We highly recommend that you give things to the judges. We bring our business plan as well as copies of all the flyers that we give out. This way the judges have something that they can look back at to remember your team. It's also important to practice with different audiences, so your presenters feel very comfortable giving the presentation. Now, what do you think the hardest audience to present in front of would be? And I'll give you a hint, it's not the judges. Exactly. Practice in front of your team. Do it multiple times. If you can practice in front of your peers, you can practice in front of just about anybody, and it will be really easy to give the presentation in front of the judges. You also have to think about what you're going to wear in the room. It's important that your presentation team looks cohesive. Some teams use team t-shirts. Other teams use other team formal attire, like we have our polos. Some teams go in full-on suits, and some teams even show up in costumes. A couple years ago, the chairman's winner from Worlds all came into the judges' room looking like flight attendants. Be creative with this. It's your team. Let them see your personality through what you wear. Now, I've talked a lot about the presentation, but it's also important to practice the questions. You have between 3 to 5 minutes to answer questions, depending on how much of the time you use with your presentation. You have to do some prep for the questions. For example, think about what questions the judges might ask, and be prepared to answer those. Also, think about who's going to answer what question. This could be divided up by who knows what, or even who presents which topic in the presentation itself. Expect the worst. I know it sounds daunting, but things happen. Your time slot gets moved up, you realize I forgot something at home, or as it happened to us last year, this happens. Last year, in the middle of our presentation, we got the infamous blue screen of death. Thankfully, we practiced enough without our visuals that we could keep going and give the presentation. There's some things to think about before the day of competition and the day you're going to give your presentation. Things like, do you need an outlet? If you're going to use a TV, you're going to need some power source. There's a cabinet in our TV cart where we hide a big battery that we plug the TV into, so we don't need to be connected to an outlet, which greatly reduces our setup time. Also, think about what you're going to give to the judges. As I said before, this is highly recommended, so the judges have something to look back at that will jog their memory about your team. Get the video on a flash drive and the media release form. If you don't give these to the judges, you can't win. It's very definite deal breakers. If you don't have the media release form, then the judges can't show your video if you win, which they have to do. And if you don't give them your video, then they won't have the video to look at and to show. Also, sign up for a time. Some competitions you'll have to sign up for a time slot, others you'll be assigned one. It's important to look at the competition and see what they're doing, so that if you do have to sign up, you get that done and have a time slot to present it. The day of the presentation, we highly recommend going and finding the judges' room. At some competitions, they'll allow you to enter the room, at others they won't, so don't try to break in. But if you can get into the room, find the layout of the room. It'll help you prepare for when you want to set up your props so you know what to expect. Once again, make sure you have everything. Your props, your visuals, your media release form, your chairman's video. If you can get things set up ahead of time, like powering up your computer or plugging the TV into a computer, make sure you do that before you head into the room. This can eat up a lot of your presentation time, and it can cut your presentation off a little bit short. When you present chairmans, you have the option of having a fourth person in the room as an observer. They're not allowed to say anything. However, after the presentation, they can give you feedback. We tend to not do this because we feel it makes our presenters a little bit more nervous. However, there's not really a big downside, and you can do it if you choose to. It's just something you want to think about before you're waiting outside to go in. Before we get to questions, I just want to go over a general timeline for the awards season process. In November, you want to start brainstorming your content and coming up with a theme. In December, you want to start drafting your essays. However, don't finalize them because the prompts get released in January with the game manual. And the prompts can sometimes change. For example, last year, a new prompt was added. Start storyboarding your video. The video can take a lot of time to go through the footage, so you want to make sure you get that process started in advance. In January, you want to be finishing your essays, continue working on the video, and start writing your actual chairman's presentation. This will give your presenters lots of time to practice, so they'll give the presentation very well once they're in the room. In February, finish all of the materials that you need to submit. Most people don't realize that the essay submissions are due a couple weeks before bag attack. They're not on the same day, so make sure you get them turned in on time. Practice your presentation in February, and decide on what materials you want to give to the judges. They're usually not as great if you do this last minute. Oh, well, yes.
Presentations, the group putting the event together today is going to put all the presentations online. So if there's anything that you want.
Is it going to be first?
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask.
We can go back to the slide just a minute. Now, in March and April, it's really simple. Practice your presentation and present it. This should be all you're focusing on when it comes time to go to your competition. Now I'd like to open up the floor for any questions regarding this previous section, as well as the previous 4. Yes?
What do you guys do to counteract nervousness?
We practice, one of our favorite things to do is, before we give our presentation, we have to do it in cartoon voices. Last year I did it in Scooby-Doo. That was fun. And it gets you laughing and it gets you comfortable.
How do you do who for the thing one because is it the group that worked on the chairman's award as a group, or one group does that and you take people in to go to the presentation?
Usually we start with a large awards group, and then we choose 3 presenters. Last year we did kind of a tryout where they had to make a 1-minute snippet of a potential chairman's presentation, and then we chose who put forth the most work and who made the best presentation.
You guys had also talked about it's important to have your presentation team be part of the essay writing and presentation writing, so they are intimately familiar with every detail. You don't want to bring a group in at the end, because then they're just not going to know. They won't have gone through all those discussions.
Yes?
You mentioned having a presentation team. Is there any time you would consider just one person doing the whole show? Years ago at the Raleigh Regional, I was on 1311, and we had one person do the Chairman's Award presentation. So has that evolved into a team concept, or let me hear your thoughts on those 2 concepts.
What do you guys think?
I think it really depends on your team. I'm not sure if the rules state that you need to have 2 to 3 people doing the presentation, or you could just have one. Usually we have 3 people. That's just what works best for us. But honestly, if you guys feel that you only have 2 presenters who can really present this in the best way, then definitely that's something that you do.
I would recommend more than one though, in case they get the nerves when they walk in the room and everything goes blank. That way there's someone just to be able to give the presentation, and they're not just staring at the judges with the deer in headlights kind of look.
also what she said earlier, so everyone is familiar with different topics, because every team has lots of aspects, and not everyone knows everything about the robot, or outreach, or business, or anything else that you do.
Once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming. If you have any, more questions, feel free to contact us at this email. Contact us at waltonrobotics.org. I think we might be sticking around for 1 or 2 more minutes to answer any remaining questions, but I think we got to get out of here pretty soon to the next. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for coming.